Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Kabbalah Explained Simply. The question today, do other beings control me? Am I in control of my best interest? Well, all evidence suggests, meaning all of the data that I have internally suggests that I do control my personality. My personality is an amalgamation of different experiences and desires that I have. Could it be possible that there's someone else, something else at the helm? This is the question that we're going to answer today, and science and Kabbalah will come together to give us the answer to this. It's going to be fascinating. I look forward to your questions. I'll be checking the chat frequently. So welcome to everyone who's joined us, and it'll be a great hour together. Afterwards, we'll have a special Q&A session for KabU students. Feel free to join KabU and you'll get an instant access email so that you can join that exclusive session as well. So this question is, to answer it, we're going to first talk about science and see what it has to say. And then we'll gradually go to what the connection is between science and Kabbalah. So, are we controlled in some way? It doesn't feel like we are, right? Because I have evidence that I'm making all of my decisions, and I have this record of all of the ways that I decided about different things that I did. But before we talk about humans, let's see how it is on other levels of nature. For example, there is what is called the Lancet liver fluke, and it is called a parasite. And what is its goal? The Lancet liver fluke basically wants to get inside of a cow. Okay, that is where the adult liver flukes, which are kind of this flatworm, they live inside of the cow. And the problem for the Lancet liver fluke is that its eggs can only develop outside of the cow. So in order for it to go through its stages, cycles of development, it needs to be outside of the cow. And it needs to travel through a couple of different hosts in order to get to its goal, which is to ultimately get back inside of the cow where it can live its adult life. So how does it achieve this goal? So the first thing that it needs is the cow has to excrete these eggs, and these eggs have to get eaten by a snail. The eggs inside of the snail sort of start taking over the respiratory system of the snail, and the snail eventually excretes it into something that is very delicious. It's a delicious, slimy treat for ants. So ants love this slime ball that the snail excretes. And the reason that it needs to get eaten by the ants is because ultimately by this, it can get to its goal, which is to live inside of the cow. How is it going to do that? Cows don't eat ants, but they do eat grass. So what does an ant do? It does something that would be like kind of crazy if you did, right? Imagine if every night at midnight you would go to the tallest building you could find and stay there all night long, just gazing up at the stars. This is basically what the ant does. When all of the other ants go and do their anty things at night, whatever they do, the ant, who up until this point is basically normal, like a normal person. The ant goes out by itself, goes to the top of a blade of grass, bites down really hard on the grass, on the blade of grass. And why does it do this? It does it so it will not fall off. And as the cows come out, or it can be any grazing animal, comes out to feed on grass in the morning, the ant is waiting there, hoping to be eaten up by this cow or sheep. And if it does so, it achieves its goal, which is to get inside of the cow where it can be an adult worm and give birth to more eggs and start this cycle all over again. Now, the ant, up until the time it's getting eaten, is acting just its best anti-lifestyle, doing what all ants do. And then it goes up on the top of the blade of grass. If it doesn't get eaten, it goes for another day, because it has to get eaten at the time when grazing animals graze, which is in the morning usually. So after that, it goes back to normal. And then again, it goes every morning to the top of the blade of grass, bites down and waits to be eaten, which is death for the ant, right? This is one of the kind of fun examples of parasitic behavior. There's a lot more. But the point is that for the animals that the parasite invades, it's not a synergistic relationship. It's a parasitic relationship where the thing, the animal in this case, does things that aren't beneficial to it, but the animal feels like doing it. Feels like doing something that's going to make it die. All of the rest of the time, the ant's just acting like a normal person. So it's really like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where once night falls, they go and do this crazy thing. They're out doing vampiric things, I don't know what, and then back to normal, and then again each night doing weird stuff. Now, what if we're being influenced similarly? Now, I know that's like a crazy jump, right? Because I'm not infected by parasites. Maybe if I was infected, there are things like rabies, for example, that can make one act strange, salivate more. Malaria, for example, if you get bitten by a mosquito with malaria, then for various biological reasons, you start becoming more attractive to other mosquitoes and so on. But let's say we're not infected by a parasite, then it probably doesn't apply to us, right? It couldn't be that anything or anyone is affecting the purchases that I make on a daily basis, or what I suddenly feel like eating. Right? If all of a sudden I have a desire for vanilla ice cream or for chocolate or for a hamburger, no one's affecting that, right? Because I'm not infected by a parasite. Or who I decide to date, or where I decide to work or go to school. As long as I'm not infected by a parasite, I'm in control. Possibly not. So half of our body's 30 trillion cells don't contain your own DNA. So let's say our DNA, there's an argument that your DNA, there's a part of a DNA that controls every part of you, your personality, but we're not even talking about that. We're talking about the fact that half of your body's 30 to 40 trillion cells don't contain your own DNA, but that of bacteria, protozoa, and so on. So that's quite a lot. Could they be influencing my behaviors at all? Well, let's talk about mice. So in the laboratory, here you have what is called a bubble mouse and a normal mouse. Bubble mice are basically in the petri dish of mice environs, like a sterile place where the mice is not colonized by the bacteria by which it would ordinarily be colonized. A normal mouse is colonized by certain micey bacteria and behaves like a normal mouse, but bubble mice behave altogether differently. Almost like aliens relative to other mice. So a bubble mouse who lacks the ordinary bacteria mice have will not respond to the same stimuli that mice will get really excited about. If you give them certain little trinkets, they'll get really excited, especially if it's something novel, something that's new for it. It'll get really excited about it. A normal mouse, if you separate it from its mother, will be prone to lifelong skittishness. It'll be just nervous and not in a good state most of the time. A normal mouse, if you throw it into some water, it will fight for its life to survive. Survival instinct. None of this is the case with a bubble mouse. A bubble mouse, meaning it's a lab mouse that's protected from being infested with all kinds of bacteria a mouse normally would be. A bubble mouse lacks curiosity. You can show it whatever you want. Not excited, not interested. Anything new is the same as anything that's been in its cage for a year. If you separate it from its mother, like a psychopath, doesn't care. Doesn't care about being with its mother, and it's just the same with or without her, unlike the normal mouse. If you throw the bubble mouse into a water tank, paddle a little bit, it's okay, I'll just die. So it sort of lacks even the basic survival instinct. So it lacks willpower. So very, very different based on what kind of bacteria are inhabiting the mouse. Of course, you can change all of this bubble mouse behavior by inhabiting it with normal bacteria. Okay, but I'm not a mouse. I'm not infected by a parasite. I'm a human, and I feel that I'm in control of my decisions. I know what decisions I made and didn't make, and that's why I know I'm in control of my life. So how does this apply to me? Well, it turns out that if you take a bubble mouse, I have that mislabeled, it's not normal mouse. If I take the bacteria, the microbiota inside of a medically obese person, and you put that bacteria inside of a bubble mouse that wasn't normally colonized by bacteria, right? You put the obese humans bacteria inside the bubble mouse, what do you think happens? It gets obese. It starts getting fat. If you take the microbiota of a depressed person and put it in bubble mice, what happens? The mouse starts displaying symptoms of a depressed mouse, which if you get to know mouse like you can get to know your dog, they do have a personality, and there are symptoms of excitement, symptoms of depression, and this is what happens. So you can take human microbacteria, put them inside of a mouse, and start seeing if we're personifying the mouse's behavior, you can start seeing the symptoms that are similar to those of the human who had that bacteria. So this is to say that perhaps, just perhaps, these tiny tenants inside of our gut are actually influencing us. How would they do that? Well, there are many, many psychoactive compounds that these microbiota release. many of which are neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters are correlated to all of the ways that I feel on a daily basis, whether angry, excited, motivated, sad, tired, hungry. All of these things are propelled by neurotransmitters. How it does this is by traveling up this pathway called the vagus nerve and influencing my brain. Now, let's just be honest. I am under the impression that this is not the case. I don't feel this happening to me. Like, sorry to use this example, but I don't feel cancer's onset over the course of several years. I feel like everything's going fine. But something very big and catastrophic is brewing. And similarly, I don't feel how these microbiota, all these different ones inside of me, are actually influencing me either by directly activating this vagus nerve, or by influencing it with influencing the neurotransmitters. How much maybe, because I feel the opposite, right? I feel like I am the one, first of all, if we're just talking about me influencing my body, I am the brain. I am the executive of this body, and I influence it. I influence my stomach. It doesn't influence me so much, right? If I have a stomach ache, okay. But generally, I'm the CEO of my body. It turns out that when we look at this super highway between the gut and the brain, 80% of the traffic is coming from the bottom up, and only 20% perhaps is coming from the top down. Okay, what's the point of all this? We want to know if perhaps we're controlled by other beings than ourselves. And it's clear from science that the answer is yes, though we don't feel it. I want to be in control of my mood all the time. I mean, that's really the most important thing, that I'm in control of my mood. If I feel great, whatever gets me there, fine. For say the regular person, if it's smoking something, if it's drinking something, if it's eating something, if it's being in love, traveling somewhere, it's all about getting to that good feeling. And I mean, this is why we take drugs, right? Because we realize that we're not really in control of this. The question here, of course, is can we be in more control of this? And does this inquiry of do other beings control my personality, does it stop here? Or perhaps is there something much deeper? Obviously, that was just an intro because we want to talk about what Kabbalah's perspective is on this. And sometimes science develops, and then Kabbalists can explain what's going on a deeper level of reality, on a more fundamental level of reality, because of some science that came out. So that's the only reason why we talked about it. Now, let's see what Bala Sulam said about 100 years ago in a poem that he wrote. I'm going to read you just a brief line from it. I became ignoble and became two camps. One obeyed the orders of my corpse, and the rest follow my soul. So this is a great Kabbalist. That is one who attained the spiritual worlds, 125 spiritual degrees. This Kabbalist made it all the way up. And even he is not as smug as me, because I feel like I'm in control. I mean, if you take some big person, some CEO in this world, does he feel like he's under anyone's control? You know, some king Well, this Kabbalist who attained the forces that the Creator has, right? He really attained the management of reality, to some level at least. This is what he writes. I became ignoble and became two camps. One obeyed the order of my corpse, and the rest follow my soul. So a Kabbalist is one who starts to divide himself a bit. Instead of feeling like I'm completely in control of myself, he starts to become a little more realistic, realizing that he consists of more than the average person thinks. I mean, this is already like brand new science. Everyone's getting excited, and nobody knows really the microbiome. How can you really influence it? Can you influence it? Maybe you're just colonized from birth for the most part, and if you have what correlates to a depressed microbiome, you're going to be depressed. And it's not even anything that you did or anything that happened to you. It's just your microbiome, and it's making you depressed, and that's that. Nothing you can do. Or if you're a happy person that no matter what they do, they drink, they don't drink, they eat bad, they eat good, they're just happy people. Maybe there's nothing you can do about it. Nobody knows for sure yet. But at least what this does is it lets us understand that, like a pregnant soon-to-be mom says, I'm eating for two. We're eating for 40 trillion. Okay, so we have these inhabitants inside of us, and we're a little more complex than we thought. We contain multitudes. Most of the inhabitants in us, most of what is controlling how I feel and perhaps even what I do, are not my own DNA, are not me. And perhaps I do make decisions for myself, but before I'm even presented with the decision that I want to make, maybe it's already kind of pre-decided how I'll decide, what I'll feel like doing, because it's already determined like what's inside of me. And we know this from life, right? We know that like someone who's a drug addict, they can't really, even if that's your son, God forbid, you can't really treat him like he's your son, like when he was a 5-year-old. He's different. He's changed now by the psychoactive processes that are going on when he takes the drugs and how they just have a grip on him. And we feel this way about various things in our lives, various addictions. Our whole life is really addiction to different habits, and they basically control us for the most part. We make some decision, but it's already after a huge buildup of all kinds of chemical reactions inside of us that are influencing that decision. So maybe we're not really deciding as much as we thought. And all this microbiome science just helps us kind of come to terms a little bit with that, with what the Kabbalists realize, which is that you actually consist of at least 2 camps internally. And those camps can be divided into trillions more, into many more, let's call them desires, that can manifest in various physical forms, but at their root level, at the computer language program level of things, they're actually desires. And these desires are divided into 2 camps. What are these camps? Well, one of them, and this is also why I feel so not like this Kabbalist. I feel so like I'm in control of everything in my life. And I have this false perception that is not just a perception, it's an absolute conviction that I'm in control. It's because usually I don't even have these 2 camps. I just have 1 camp. And the other camp is actually the one that awakens towards spirituality. I don't know what it is. It's very strange. It's this alien desire that starts wanting something more than just what's in this world. If it could be strong, if it could be as strong as the other camp, that would be great. If I could reach this state Bala Sulam is talking about, where I have two camps and they're equal, that would actually be called that I have free choice. So when you want to talk about free choice, Kabbalists, there's a special range for it. And that's a range where these two become equal. So that little point in the heart that made you come to the wisdom of Kabbalah, made you at least watch this broadcast. Maybe it's the first time you're seeing our broadcast. And every once in a while, that little desire kind of pops up and reminds you about the meaning of life, that maybe you should search for some philosophy or some psychology or some method or maybe a religion, but something related to the meaning of life. It could be science. This little thing, that desire that pops up every once in a while, that can actually become equal, such that in each moment you have a decision to make towards spirituality or towards corporeality. And then there's an integration between the two, meaning you decide something that is actually good for you overall. Okay, so that's generally an introduction to this topic. Now, we know we're controlled by our microbiome and stuff like that. Obviously, if I get infected with a parasite, then I'll be really controlled. But could it be that there's something even beyond that that is operating me, that's operating my life, has always been operating my life? So it turns out that there is, and it's all of humanity. It's this entire system to which I belong, because I am connected to other people just like a cogwheel in a system. And the worst part of it is that I don't feel this at all. I don't feel that I'm interconnected with other people. And that's a big problem, right? Because if they're influencing me and I don't know it, then what does that say for my decision-making process when I feel that I'm making my decisions all the time? And I'm also influencing them reciprocally. That could be problematic, because if I'm not doing this consciously, I'm influencing them unconsciously. Am I influencing them in a good way? And we're in like one boat together. So I can like drill under myself, but the entire ship could go down just by me drilling under myself. So Kabbalists tell us that this is actually the situation that I'm in, that I'm tightly interconnected with some little boy in Africa that I don't know, with some Chinese person on the other side of the world. I'm totally interconnected, in more of an interconnection than if we were living in one apartment or one womb, because all of our thoughts are going back and forth. Our thoughts and desires are influencing one another in a totally unconscious way. If that happens unconsciously, where we're all unconscious, except for Kabbalists, if that happens, then you get a world like the one you have. You get a life like the one that you have. That's how life is when you're unconscious. And so this is what happens when the whole system to which I am belonging has a certain direction, like the eggs here, they have a certain direction, which is to go back into the cow. And none of the things along the way to that make any sense unless you know the whole cycle, right? Like, why is this ant acting so funny? The snail, these different things along the way don't really make any sense, right? Unless you know the goal that they're leading towards. And that's the way our life is, that all of the things that we see in our world, they're all happening in a way that they don't make sense. Like, nothing that happens to me, I don't agree with a lot of the things that happen to me. My life rarely does anyone's life go exactly how you want it to go. And it definitely seems like at the end of our life, what was it all really for, right? What, just to have a couple of children and enjoy them being cute for a while and to enjoy a meal every day? What was it all for? The problem is that we don't see the goal. And there's a saying, don't show a fool a work that is half done. A lot of artists don't like to show their work until it's all done. They don't want to receive criticism in the middle of their work, because it's criticism from people who don't see how it will all come together. It's like opening a novel in the middle or starting to watch a movie right in the middle. It's easy to say, well, this movie sucks, if you didn't see the whole exposition, the plot arc. So similarly with our lives, we don't see to where first of all, we don't see the beginning of the movie. I'm born into this world and I don't know what I am, where I'm from. We see with this microbiome business that I don't even know of what matter I am built. We're just finding out, right? We're just finding out that we consist of the microbiota. I mean, we knew there was something down there, right? But scientists, this is like brand new within the last few years. They're just discovering that the microbiome matters and that it matters what we put inside of our body and so on. So we don't know where we come from. We don't know what happened before our birth. It seems, when I get born into this world, as though it's been existing for thousands and millions and even billions of years, and I seemingly have some evidence of some big bang that happened, and I'm guessing that by looking at some background radiation. And so we're making lots of different very educated guesses, but do we really know where we're from? No. Do we really know where we're going? No. What happens after we die? Who knows? Anybody's grandma can make some speculation, and I can choose to believe it or not, but who actually knows? Nobody knows. It all depends on belief. So we have this movie that we don't know really what happened before or what's going to happen, and that's why our whole lives are in disarray. It looks like chaos. It looks like bad things are happening in the world, and there's a lot for me to disagree with. If I look at the politicians, if I look at the wars that are happening, hostages, all kinds of things in our world, there's plenty to disagree with, right? But, like if I try to go and beg that ant not to go up on the blade of grass in the middle of the night, well, I don't know that there's a larger purpose that the one who is controlling him has already ordained. And that's why this ant really feels like you would break his heart if you jailed him and told him you can't go up on that blade of grass. You would really break his heart. Similarly with us, we're not seeing the plan of which we are a part, which we are executing. Now, Now, in the case of parasites, of course, it looks pretty bad, right? It's definitely not to the benefit of the cricket. There's like a cricket, for example, that gets infected by a parasite and then it's all disoriented. And crickets like to live on land, right? And this one parasite makes it dive into the water, right? So it dives into the water where it drowns, but water is, as imperfect it is a life place for the cricket, it is the perfect breeding ground for the parasite. So the parasite is doing what benefits it and not its host. What is controlling us, though, is not like that seems to us. Rather, it is doing something beneficial that is beneficial to us, with us, doing with us things that are against our will, but which ultimately benefit us, but not in the short term. This is sort of like, let's say you have a baby that really wants to go outside, and in order to stop it from going outside, you tell it that there's a lion outside or a bear. You tell it this lie because if you would tell it the truth, which is that it's just good for little kids to go to bed right now, then the child could not agree with it. They could not understand the truth. They can understand a lie. And we're similar in this respect, that the truth is maybe not so pleasant to us, and the lie happens to be more desirable. Okay, let's see who's with us. Let's take a look. So we have from Pennsylvania, Ranit, Netherlands. Hey, Jetsy. Jetsy's always with us. Patricia from Ohio. Akai from Peru. From Florida, we have Art. James from Portland. Yvette from DC. Lisbeth from the Netherlands. San Diego, we have Joe. Renee from North Carolina. Steve from Michigan. Southern England, we have Martin. Great to see you all, friends. North Carolina, we have Annie. Marta from Spain. Friends from all around the world. From Mexico, we have Pedro. Gianni from the United States. From Spain, we have Simona. California, my home state, we have Cointa. All right, excellent. Good to be with all of you. I just wanted to take a moment to say hi there. If you have any questions, feel free to write in. And again, we'll have a special session after this where you can ask your questions live. And we'll get them all answered there. It's an hour-long Zoom session. But let's go back to our topic. So obviously, we want to know how we can be more in control of our lives, but in a way that we're not upsetting, because if there is a goal for life, right? Unlike the Lancet Fluke that has really only its own benefit in mind, the system which we're a part of, actually has our best interest in mind. It is actually working for us, and crazy as this sounds, it's working for all of humanity all at the same time, like a mother duck that's able to look after all 12 of her ducklings. This system can look to the benefit of all of its parts, including all of those parasites, including the microbiota inside of you, those trillions, each and every particle in reality of whatever size, and certainly of those at the human level, are all taken care of lovingly by this system. My part in this system is to go along with it, just as I am now, each and every day of my life, doing what I do under its control. And the only problem then is that I'll have the life that I have without knowing why anything is happening. Now, if I knew, imagine right now, you won $1 billion and now you have the lottery ticket. Everything else that happens during your day, it's all good. You're just fine. You're happy, elated. You can be in a traffic jam. You can, anything really, there's nothing that can bring you down. If you were to find out that you have this lottery ticket in the metaphorical sense of your entire life, to find out that you have it, you would suddenly have this brand new perspective on everything. And it really would be a new reality, right? If you were able to see it from such a perspective with such special rose-colored glasses. This is what the wisdom of Kabbalah provides us. It allows us to see where we're at, which we don't see. It lets us see the beginning, where we came from, where we're going, and then allows us to start affecting the reality if it needs to be affected at all. Because after all, we're saying here that it's going in a right direction. We're like cogwheels that are touching each other internally, moving each other. You don't need a Zoom. You don't need a YouTube, a Facebook. You don't need any of these things to connect. We'll discover in the future that we think those are the future, right? That we'll just get headsets and we'll be on Meta, more and more and more. We'll get chips implanted. No, all of this will disappear eventually. People will turn away from it. Not tomorrow, not next week, but it will happen because we'll discover that we are so tightly interconnected that I can communicate with you internally, even without words. This is how I'm connected to each and every person in the world. And something is supposed to happen in this connection, not what we're doing currently. So currently, I look at it in the opposite way, parasitically, almost like a cancer cell. You can even say cancer is a manifestation of this internal attitude. That's why it exists, because cancer basically are cells that parasitize the body. They do inside the body what's beneficial for them, in the process of which they actually kill the environment in which they can live. How dumb is that? That's actually my attitude to reality. As a result of the misperception I have of reality, because I don't feel myself as one of these cogwheels. I don't feel that anything I'm doing affects anyone else, really. I can go out and run somebody over, but I don't feel that here, right now, in my thoughts, in my desires, that every internal move I make is impacting not just someone else, but affecting each and every person in the world. Every single one of them is affecting me as well. And none of us know that it's happening. So what do we need to do, if anything? Well, first of all, obviously, we need to come to awareness of this. I need to become aware that I'm in a kind of soup. I'm not floating in the air. I'm in a soup, at least this connected, where the waves will affect all of the other croutons in this soup. And this is how I'm connected to everybody with all of my thoughts. And right now, I think of the world, because of my misperception that I'm not in this soup, I think of the world in a way of a cancer cell. How can I get the most benefit out of everyone? How can I profit off of them? That if I sell you a banana, I get more than it was worth, or as is the case today, I sell you air, right? I I saw a news article that on Amazon they're selling vitamins that don't even contain any vitamins. It's just some powder, right? And many of the vitamins were just this powder that don't contain any of the actual vitamin. Even the vitamin, it's a question if it's actually doing anything. But no, they don't even contain the molecules they're purported to contain. So this is how, and a lot of companies were doing this. So this is how there's a general attitude towards others that I want them to give me as much as possible. And I want to give, but only the minimum level that I can. How can I make this phone a little bit cheaper? How can I make this refrigerator a little bit cheaper? Say my grandma's refrigerator, it lasted 50 years, right? Today, 5 years after I have my refrigerator, it's blinking, it's already broken, because they figured out how to make it just cheap enough with physics and math that it would break as soon as possible without people saying this is junk, don't buy it, but just last long enough that in the perception of the person, it's okay. So with this attitude, it's opposite, totally opposite to what needs to be for me to be a correct instrument in this system, meaning for me to be allowed to come to awareness of my role in this system and how I can change it. So there's not a quick 1-2 punch, I can tell you that right now, to become aware of this, meaning for this perception to open up that Kabbalists attain. This perception is given on certain conditions, and this is why we study the wisdom of Kabbalah. This is why it's a serious study that Kabbalists embark on. But let's talk about so we talked about how this basically works, right? The microbiome is 80% influential on me, how I feel myself, which is sort of as the brain that's in control of the body, while that reality is only instantiated in maximum, say, 20%, right? So the body is in control of me, not me in control of the body. I don't want this to be the case, right? I don't like to think that. And, for example, if I go on a diet, I would like to think that if I decide right now that the diet is the best thing for me, or I decide right now that I'm going to get my medical degree, I'm not going to eat the cake in the case of the diet. I'm not going to party every night in the case of the would-be doctor, right? I'm going to make the decisions that are best for me. But it turns out, according to this diagram, it turns out that it really just depends. I mean, we saw with the mice, right, that you can make them demotivated. Put some depressed persons, some lethargic couch potato persons, microbiota into the mouse, it becomes couch potato-like. It's the weed smoking video game player of, mice. And so what if I just have such microbiota? Is there a way that I can overcome it? Is it going to be much harder for me such that I will lack the stamina to actually do it? Okay, that's on the microbiome level, on the biological level, but we don't care about that really. We want to talk about the deeper level, because there's a deeper level that is animating, giving life, giving manifestation to the science that the scientists are discovering. And that's because of the way that I'm built inside on the level of my desire. Now, we don't like it. We don't like to think about it like this. It's a little bit offensive, but this cow is actually more representative of my desire than any imagination that I have about myself. Because if you look at it, the body is on the very same level as the head. We have an imaginary depiction of ourselves that looks like this, where the head is actually above the body. But what is that? Why is reality built like that, where my head is above my body? Well, guess what? It's just something that tells me about the future. It tells me about the goal. Like I showed you earlier, the cow that is the goal of the Lancet flatworm getting inside of that cow. Well, our biological anatomical build is based on our future spiritual structure. Not that the spiritual looks like humans, okay? That's not the case. But we're built geometrically like the spiritual structure, where the head needs to be on top of the body. But really, we start out like this cow, where the head is on the same level as the body, and we're a lot more like this, where let's say 80% is my body deciding things for me, meaning my desire deciding for me, and then 20%, that 20% is actually just my justifications. So first, my desire tells me, so I get something from my gut, let's say. We're kind of merging the biological and the spiritual, but it's not the case. It's just that in our lives, there's a parallel, like a toy version of what's happening inside. That's why we have the microbiome influencing us through the vagus nerve. In our desire, our body, which is another word Kabbalists use for desire. They say body, but they really mean desire. The desire is what emerges first. And then I feel like I'm making a decision based on this desire, but it is actually determining everything what I want. Because like the parasite that has its goal, this desire has a goal that wants to be realized. If emerges within me a desire for sex, what do I do with that? I have to either realize it or put it out. If it's a very strong desire, it doesn't like to be put out. If an addict has a desire for a cigarette, what else can you offer it? You can't offer him really anything. I mean, he'd probably take $1 million, but what he really wants is the only thing he really wants. Now, let's say I've been trying to stop smoking and I actually smoke that cigarette. Well, as I'm smoking it, then the brain gets involved. And it gets involved just to justify why it was a good idea, but this will be my last cigarette, my last piece of cake. That's actually the role of the brain. Kabbalists want to spin this, they want to invert this, they want to flip it upside down. They want to go from this, which is a more accurate representation of what a person starts as. As Kabbalists say, man is born as a beast. A wild ass's colt is born a man. So we're born really as a beast. It's nothing offensive because that is the matter that we're supposed to sculpt. We're supposed to sculpt it into this form that we have as a placeholder. We have this placeholder where the head is on top of the body just for us to know what the goal would be. Where every single thing that I do, I know why I'm doing it. How can I get to this state? Well, we can go back to the example of the microbiome. Let's take what scientists, just as an analogy, what scientists think they're starting to understand. Whether it's going to turn out to be like that, we'll see. A Kabbalist, by the way, can feel every cell in his body. He's familiar with every single cell in his body and all the particles of reality, and he knows how they work, and he could go get Nobel Prizes if he wants to. But he doesn't do that because it's not important. He's very happy with whatever the scientists are discovering. We can take it as an example and then use it to talk about spiritual things. So let's take what scientists are talking about the microbiome. They're saying that, oh, it's not just whatever medicine, pharmaceuticals that you take. In fact, some of those could be really dangerous, because if you put them inside of your body, maybe you'll, nuclear bomb the good microbiomes, the microbiota. Let's say there are certain microbiota that contribute to a good mood, uplifted spirits. There are some that contribute to depression, anxiety, via cortisol release or whatever it is. And I can feed certain ones with certain foods. And if I eat, let's say, sugar, maybe that's very exciting for me, but it contributes to something that 4 days from now is going to be a very depressive state that I'm not going to know where it came from, but it's because I fed those certain ones. Or if I have alcohol, really exciting right now, but maybe that's like, now, I don't know if it's true or not again, but scientists are saying that alcohol, it's like a nuclear bomb. It's, it's death. Just plan on an early death if you drink alcohol. So, but the important thing that they're coming to is to understand that inside of me, I'm eating for 40 trillion, and what I eat can feed those tenets that I want to have inside of me and contribute to my overall sense of well-being after the meal is over. And it might not be the things that I feel like eating in this moment, because that's according to the short view. But in the long view, I need to think about who I'm feeding. So it's kind of similar to having 2 dogs in your backyard. Let's say there's a really horrible dog. I don't know. He bites everyone. He's a bad guy. And there's a really good one. Okay. The one that you feed will live, and the one that you don't feed will die. And obviously, if I could do this with my body, I would feed just those bacteria that are going to make me feel awesome, that are going to make me feel motivated, loving, powerful, great, smart, that are going to make me more intelligent. I'm going to feed just those. And I'm going to not feed the ones that give me cavities, that do all of those bad things, that make you feel depressed, that maybe even make me like those lab mice that make me want to die, really make me feel like the world is blackness. So what I need to do, they don't know how to do that yet. Otherwise, we'd maybe eat those foods, or would we? Maybe we would still be so focused on our desire that we wouldn't be able to even eat the foods that could make us feel great tomorrow because we're too focused on today. Now, this is important because there's a question of doing this spiritually. Can I feed the spiritual desire in me? Can I feed the spiritual desire in me? Where is it? So if I have my whole body, which is my regular desires, so not the desires that brought you to this broadcast, the regular desires that are for regular things, can I figure out the correct balance between feeding this animal and feeding this animal, this point in the heart that is right now so small that only every once in a while I think about the meaning of my life. Most of the rest of the time, I just think about sunshine, chocolate, things of our world. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. Maybe the scientists will discover something different than what they think of right now. Maybe right now they're looking for that perfect feeding. What are the exact things I need to feed it myself, feed the microbiome so I'll be smart, happy, healthy, harmonious, and get rid of all the bad ones. Maybe we'll discover that actually we need all of the bad ones as well. But even the ones that they're trying to eliminate, even the ones that, say you use some fluoride to kill off those specific cavity causing, even those we need. And even those ones that cause depression inside of us, all of those we need, we just need them in the correct balance. How do I harmonize these 40 trillion so that I won't eliminate a single one? And already existing in me exists all of the diseases you can imagine. One time they looked on the New York City subway, scientists, and they found that it contains AIDS, Ebola, everything's on there. And we're getting on these subways every day. And it will turn out that we actually consist of all of these possible things. And the only thing that happens inside of us is an imbalance. And there's a way that I can make them balanced. And similarly, I need to balance this point in the heart, first of all, by growing it significantly, because it's not enough that every once in a while I'll think of the meaning of my life. This is what the books of the wisdom of Kabbalah are about. This is what our courses are about in KabU. They're essentially miracle grow. I hate the word miracle, but there's some kind of nice organic soil that you can put on this point and grow it and grow it and grow it patiently, like a gardener, like a good gardener. You can't dig it up every second. You got to grow it. And by this, you eventually attain harmony, and this internal harmony leads to external harmony. Thank you for being with us. And if you are joining our exclusive broadcast, I'll see you there. And we'll see you next time.